Looks like we're live. Might be live. Hopefully you're live. It looks like we are live. Recording live from Arlington, Vermont. It's Happy Valley Hobbies. I'm Mr. Kate, and these are hobbies that make me happy. For those who sort of are slightly confused, I have moved my time again, mainly because I've recently found out that there's somebody I like to watch, Anthony Dodge, the Train Outsider. He starts at 2:30. At 3:30. Since I started at 3, we wound up sort of unintentionally crossing the streams, basically. So hello, Anthony. Speaking of the person that I'm trying not to run at the same time on. Hello, Anthony. Yeah, it's decided to sort of like move it up a half an hour, so I can turn around and join your live stream chat at the instead of waiting for a half an hour. So that's the reason for the new timing. But one of these days I'll eventually settle down on an actual time, and I think that's one of the disadvantages of showing up to the live stream thing a little late, is because all the good spots are taken, and you don't really get an audience by being on top of more popular channels. And so that's why I moved it a half an hour. So yeah, absolutely. But it's one of those things. The way I look at it is that if I'm going to cross the stream, do it that's somebody that I don't really their content or the personality isn't engaging for me. I mean, that's the way it is and all that. And I think with Anthony, there's a lot of I mean, I admit I don't really care for the marketing stuff, but you do have something that is engaging that I apparently like. So that's why I'm sort of like, hope, trying to keep all right, that makes sense. It's like that's one of the reasons why I didn't really want to be this early, because of people are still working in the US. But if it I wind up with a lot more European watchers, I guess that's the way to go. And yeah, it's one of those things. I'm the process of getting something that hopefully people will like, to at least watch the reruns, not necessarily the main portion of it. But until things happen that way, always that's right. I want to keep it that way so I could see. And another thing is, I'm still trying to figure out how to do, how the monitor is set up and etc., where to put windows and all that. Because originally I had it on that monitor, which is an old VGA monitor, because I had it set up like I was doing the Zoom meetings at the New Tracks modeling. However, that monitor is the farthest away from the workbench, which you can barely see the light coming off this edge here. So then I switched, the YouTube feed to go over here, and let's see, in the Zoom meeting, the live screen for Zoom is now over there, because I don't really need to keep completely on top of that. Eventually, one of the things I am thinking is eventually maybe having people come on once I get large enough, so I could still monitor people on that one. I could have the gallery view and on this monitor, and then everything for YouTube would be on the larger monitor, which it's a larger monitor, but it has lower resolution. So it's one of those, it's sometimes it's a little bit hard to read what needs to be done. But what I am doing is one of the important things with modeling is not necessarily getting everything perfect. Is that you can where you can recover from your mistakes. And last week I made a mistake with the one diorama with the water. I put the paper towels down first, and then I put the Mod Podge on. That was an error, because it wound up not looking right at all. I mean, so I wound up tearing that all apart and all that, and so I'm just going to see about rebuilding it. Can't do it completely, but it's one of those things of maybe I could show as a not the way to do it, not the way to do it. But that is what my current plan is at this time. So as you can see, I tore up the one portion there, which, because it's mostly white, it's very blanched out. It's basically a Woodland Scenics kit. So yeah, this had sort of, like, you can see how it really didn't go on to stuff here. So that's going to be like a permanent mess, but that's the way it's got to be. But so right now I'm going to be redoing the black part, probably retouching up different spots and all that. But that's the way it is. One thing I've sort of kind of found like is this brush. It's a silicone basting brush for basting your turkeys and all. The thing I like about it is that since it's silicone, nothing really sticks to it. So even though I used this last night, the glue that I was using just peels right off. Same thing with paint and all that. You can see where some of the paint hasn't completely come off, but as you can see, it doesn't really stick to it. So it's easy to clean the bristles. It's a very rough. It's a lot more. It's a very rough bristle, so it doesn't come out as nice as. Doesn't come out as nice as even an acid brush, or if or a regular brush. But since it's reusable and cleanable, that's why I'm sort of liking this for the rough details. Black down. There, I got wax paper. Yeah, I mean it's really cool. I mean it's I got this, if I remember correctly, got this at Dollar General, I think. Is it your Dollar General, or there's a local grocery store called Price Chopper? That might be possibly where I got this. But yeah, I mean it's real nice because it's like wax paper. Nothing really sticks to that down. But it's not the bestest brush. You know, it's very hard. It's for basting, not for painting, so it doesn't really uh, spread paint very well. I think base. I never based it, but I'm assuming the what you're basting is possibly thicker. I do not know. Oh, hello, Steve. Thank you for coming. I think I said that I was moving up my time slot a little bit too late uh, on your live stream. I think I snuck it in there, but I don't think you saw it. But yeah, I decided to go uh, between 2:30 and 3:30, so I do not so I can watch the Outsiders live stream. So when Anthony turns around and says, "Hey, I'm leaving," and all that, that that gives me a clue that when to uh, gives me a clue to start wrapping up mine. Well, as long as it's in the United States. So Anthony, do you have the? I'm trying to. I want to say next generation, but I don't think he's the next generation. He's sort of the next generation after the next generation. The, the continuation of the Dodge tradition of model trains. Oh, hello, Lynn. See that you snuck in there. I think I've said before the my monitor setup is good enough for doing live streams or behind the scenes live streams, and then the bench work is designed mostly to be the bench work, but I haven't been able to get them to coordinate with themselves correctly at this point. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I have seen your setup and all that, but it's one of those things that sometimes you don't know how people things do things behind the scenes, because there's sometimes that you can't really uh sometimes you can't do behind the scenes stuff with the stuff that you're using on it. It's like you can't really it's like you can't really I don't think what the analogy is. It's very hard to see your face because you can't take your eyes out and look at them that way. You have to look through it as a mirror. One of the things I have to do here is probably retouch the brown and the green. They're more for base colors, so when I put stuff on them, they don't look as awkward. if something fails. Almost finished with everything. Yeah, I was looking for my brown bottle of paint. What did I put it? It's like I'm finding black, the blue, the green, finding all the colors but brown. And then I happen to realize that, oh, wait a minute. I bought a pint, very large can of brown and all that, because brown usually takes up a lot of spots. Of course, the interesting thing is that just when I'm getting ready to go on, all of a sudden every fly from Bennington County decided to come inside my house for something. I did wind up opening up the door and shooing them out, but there are some stragglers. Some black there that that's probably no, it's not else. Sort of help hide where the air bubbles got into. And one of the things I got to figure out how to make that less flat. The idea is that there's like the small stream is coming out into a much larger, slower river, and it still winds up bringing a lot of the sediment towards that direction downstream. Yeah. Thinking of doing a variation of the Mod Podge toilet paper. Instead of using Mod Podge for the binder. Let's see how well it's using it right on the black paper. Yeah, I think what happened is that wound up getting a lot of air. Since it didn't go all the way down, since I put the Mod Podge on top, there wasn't enough. Mod Podge isn't viscosity isn't low enough to actually go through everything, so that's why it wound up not looking. That's why I wound up looking at that it had air bubbles on. But this is a diorama I'm practicing on, so I'm not really. I'm more annoyed than anything, but at the same time, I'm not. Yes, Steve Charles, that is a basting brush. The color for this is Tessa's Crap mattes. Assuming black, but it actually does not say what color. Oh, there it is, black. It's a relatively cheap paint, and because this is the more want to say the base color. It's more of if something chips or something like that, like it has here and all that, it winds up not when the top comes off, it doesn't look as obvious. So yeah, it's one of those things that use the cheapest paint for the base, and then as you get more and more detailed and all that, then you can add more and more expensive the expensive stuff. Plain ones, but and my idea is that after everything is all said and done, I'm just trim the toilet paper. Now, probably at the beginning of the pandemic, I probably would not have done this because, well, toilet paper was very uh, very hard to come by at that time. Oh, well, that makes sense, Lynn. However, this is supposed to be somewhere on the Vermont-New York border. As far as I know, New York nor Vermont have deserts, but it would be easier to do it that way. Looks like this acrylic is drying faster than the Mod Podge. Yeah. It's like going with the Mod Podge sort of machine. Get paint on the rocks. And gotcha. Yeah, I think even a drought in Vermont is still a lot wetter than a California drought. I mean, it might get to the point where you wouldn't see any water. It would, you just see just the rocks and all that. But if you're looking between the rocks, you'll still see water. Moran, Vander, Moran. I guess I'm not able to say the word I want. Uh, Moranding. Apparently, my vocabulary is not translating from the brain to the mouth. It'll happen every. All right. Now, see about adding hodgepodge. The krill, solid. And with this Mod Podge, I wound up putting a little water in it to stretch it out a little bit more. So it should Hello, real artist. And the interesting thing is that adding Mod Podge makes the black acrylic gray. However, Mod Podge dries clear. So I'm assuming that this is temporarily, gee, this doesn't look right. Now, I do plan on putting at least a second layer of toilet paper, tissue paper. That will be just the Mod Podge. There will be no color added to it. And for those who've shown up a little late, what I'm using is, yes, this is a silicone turkey baster, chicken baster. It's a baster of some sort. So I like that because when the paint dries, it doesn't stick to it. But the reason why I'm redoing all this is I sort of did it backwards last time. I put the newspaper down first, then the Mod Podge. I should have went the other direction. So the Mod Podge did, as you can see in here, it's sort of like it didn't soak all the way through to the end, so it wound up having that all over the place. And I'm like, that does not look good. So, and I think the success of a good model railroader is knowing how to recover. It's not necessarily how to be perfect. I believe. Oh, hello, Dwight. Thank you for coming in. And it's also uh, like a musician. They hit a wrong note. Question is that can they do it in such a way where nobody notices that they missed a note? A lot of times we're so used to having things so precise and all that, and not realizing that things are things sometimes are not perfect. Also, I the way I look at it with music and all that, especially if it's a new piece, nobody knows that's the wrong note. And I could be wrong. I think there is a very famous song that is recorded live in with an error in it, but that's the one that's the most known. Forgot which one it was. I mean, sometimes paint does The handle is not the handle itself is not it's not soft silicone, so I think it is a type of silicone. It's definitely a not as hard as the other, not as soft as the other, I should say. As well, you don't want a floppy handle, but it is made out of a type of silicone. Silicone. Work it a little bit, it does come off. So, and that's one of the reasons why I sort of kind of like this particular brush, or at least the base and all. There's not enough control for doing fine details, but for doing rough stuff like this, it's fine. I don't think there's good enough technology to be able to do bristles fine enough that would be for this style of bristle. I think by that, once you start getting really, really thin, it does get to the point where it's not as it still stretches, but then it winds up stretching too much trying to get it out of the mold and snap, etc. So that's why I don't. I think it probably took a long time to figure out how to do at least this stuff. So, all right, looks like got that pretty much done. So it's off the side to dry. And I'll look at the other one, other diorama that I had. That just like that one, I did some stuff off screen on that. What I'm doing with this one is I'm slowly raising the bed on this, so the bridge with track, because the ties on the bridge are the same height as the ties off the bridge. And right now, I think I have it just a little option. Use the ties I'm planning on using. They're railroad ties, the turnout railroad ties from Fast Tracks, or their Mount Albert scale lumber company. If I remember correctly, I'm trying to think what came first. Was it Mount Albert? Is it Fast Tracks? I think one bought out the other. Got who bought who? The idea is to get the rail same height as this. I was the right height. I think so right here is a little bit too high. I think what happened is that glue expanded the 3x5 cards a little bit much. I was using the 3x5 cards as shims. You know, basically, there's actually two here. Then I also have other short, thin pieces of wood to bring it up and all that. And then the 3x5 cards is sort of like the last shims, you know, adding stuff to it, etc. but it looks like it wound up going a little bit too high after it dried. But the thing is, now I have it. I need to find sanding. Stuff to sand. I have stuff to sand. The question is, where did I? All right. Well, first, so use sanding blocks. I brought this one. I don't have to. I'm not aiming for perfection. That specific house, yeah, I can feel like it's a high spot rate. So I'm assuming the glue puffed up a little bit. And that's one of the things I'm learning right now is how to put bridges in. Because I never put a bridge in before. So this is a learning experience for me. Still feels high. I'm still used to doing a lot of things, completely having everything completely flat. And this is not flat at all. So see even though the sponge is not completely flat, but you are seeing where where spots are high. Now, not as high. How am I going to prevent these from going out of gauge? Well, for standard gauge, they do have things where you can actually turn around and four different gauges. There's also the NMRA gauge for HO scale. They also have for HON3. They also have for O scale, S scale, all the scales. But it's usually a good idea to find a way to make a gauge. This one, the way it's set up, so you can see. Not sure if you can see where it says track. Might be too shiny, but you got this little peg here, and then you got a little peg here, and then a drop off. Sort of like a go no go gauge. So if your track, put it up against there. Now this is considered out of gauge. Yes. So I've screwed with this so much and all that it's no longer in gauge. But it's the gauge is too wide on it, so you would have to figure out a way to make it too narrow. But since this was the track I originally had on the trestle, I did use it to make sure that it was in gauge. Then from here, if it see that right there, hopefully it's showing. It's not going beyond the other pin, so it's too narrow. But if I spread this out just enough, where it falls on the other side of that nipple or gauge or pin or whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't fall this way. This is too wide, but this is within tolerance. And that's probably one of the most important things, is to making sure everything is within tolerance with each other. It doesn't have to be perfect, but at least have everything within tolerance. Everything has a tolerance. It's just that when you start getting into the really, really small scales, tolerances get also equally as tolerances have a tendency not to scale very well. So if you scale down the tolerance, it usually doesn't, it causes more issues than anything. So you have to make the tolerance wider. That's why when you look at O-scale trains, the reason why the wheels are so big and huge, because they were designed for reliability, not for scale, not for accuracy. And that's what the same thing with the earlier HO's, wheels with the pizza cutter wheels. That's the reason why they were designed for reliability, not for scale accuracy. And that's sometimes you have to sort of balance that, because you can get something that's like really fantastically scaled down and looks prototypically accurate, but then at the same time you have to be a little bit more vigilant on how you do your track maintenance. Because the smaller the tolerances, the more temperature alone changes the tolerances. It was a short time I worked for Sperry Rail Service, and it was during a time that there was a heat wave. And what had happened is that I was working on a northeast corridor, and it got so hot out that the wire had grown, because it was all hot, to the point where the counterweights at the that they have counterweights on the end, and they were so the wire had gotten hot and expanded to the point where the weights were sitting on the ground, and all of a sudden, the catenary, instead of being nice and straight, was starting to be wavy and all that, and had to slow down trains. And then also they had the same problem with the welded rail, because welded rail it expands and contracts also, and when it starts expanding too much and all that, that's when all of a sudden you get the tracks that sort of like snake and all that, because there's no place for the track to go. I think if it's too cold out, the opposite happens, where it winds up being shrinks so much it actually starts breaking stuff. All right, well, thank you for hanging out with us Rail Artists. I guess a hardware store is a little bit more, can be more exciting than what I'm doing. But they got to go to the hardware. No, actually, I don't have to go to the hardware store. I actually have to go to the grocery store to get groceries. And, well, this is my last roll. Did not realize it when I went on, but it's like, okay. I thought I had another bag of it, but I guess I do not. So next time I get groceries, I'm getting groceries. Yeah, you can turn around and you can make your own gauges for track. So if you're doing a gauge that is not normal, let's pick HON2. think they do a lot of stuff with. There's HON3, HON30, HON2.5. I don't think they do HON2. But you can turn around and make your own gauge for whatever track gauge you got. You're doing 15-inch gauge, 3.5, 42-inch gauge. Probably also do the broader gauges like India's 5'6". I'm trying to see about doing a 6-foot gauge that was sort of like in southern New York or northern Pennsylvania. The ideal is to get the tie that's on this portion, level tie that portion, which is still here. This is still high. Still going side to side. So right here, you're starting to see the glue that's underneath the 3x5. I'm not sure if I'm going deep. Have to go deep enough where I'm hitting the other 3x5 card that I had under it. I would assume if I start hitting wood too low, I can feel like there's like that for some reason everything went this way. Everything else seems to be pretty flat. Also, unfortunately, spongy. So as I'm pressing down on it to cut it, it's also going down, so it's not going as flat as before. So I think this is the most grittiest block I have, but I have a feeling it's not as first thought it. And now we're starting to see the other 3x5 card underneath. There's a high spot right where this yellow ridge is. Not quite sure what happened there. Well, looks like we're going to have to really aggressive short section. You don't know if wood plane would work or we're starting to other 3x5 card. I'm starting to think that I wound up getting a lot of glue right in this area. To be able to squeeze it out as much as I like to. So it's a wide stem. Still feeling it. It still feels like still too high. I might even have extra glue underneath this card. Not sure if a wood plane would work at this point, but I don't have a wood plane. Gee, and by the time I get done with this, the glue will be dried with the other one. Seems that it's getting still feels like a tie feels like a tea tea tartar. So sure if if actually I'm starting to think that piece of wood underneath it decided to go up. It's starting to feel real straight. It's the case. I might use a chisel blade. Can't see it. Might be a off-screen thing, but I'd say the good thing about doing these live streams and all that, it gives me incentive to keep moving forward. Probably by this week, hopefully I'll have this section ready to be tracked, and then onto this section. Now this section is not as was not as low as this one, so it's aggressive of changing. Yeah, originally I was actually thinking, oh, I'll just make the road bed the same height as the tiles, and then realizing, oh, wait a minute, I got to make sure there's it has to be lower than it has to be higher than the ties because the ties are part of track work. I'm feeling it right there, so I'm assuming that this piece of wood that I use for a shim not go as flat as I hope. It's flat down here, and I seem to this one board seems to rise up. So getting close. Getting close. It looks like, however, since I've been doing so much sanding and all that, I might have a strip of 3x5 card to sort of like this side. I've gone too far down on this side. That's why I've been sort of trying to only do one side at this point. As we're getting closer, like right at the end, really curved up because you're actually starting to sand through to the wood portion. Have it a little lower. Higher. You know, see, this side is definitely really side still a little high. I mean, I'm at to a point where I could probably sneak in a piece of card here to lift up the bridge, which might be another possibility to do. Hey, no problem, Lynn. You know, there are, you know, dealing with the after effects of someone dying is a little more important than watching me do stuff. Just found recently in my workplace, we had somebody that's been working at the company for decades pass away. And, it hit the company because not only person's spouse worked there, but also some of their children. So all of a sudden, it's like a good portion of the crew is no longer there. And some of the people, some of my coworkers, you know, they're feeling a loss. My immediate boss is, you know, worked as almost as long as him, and he's like, there's times that they didn't get along, but still misses him. All right, I'm gonna call that close enough. Set up. Probably turn around and probably want to cut this off. I take one of these and have like a strip over here to brace this up. This one, I wound up going a little too far down on this one. And then I guess next time we'll concentrate on this side. After adding another layer for the other one. So this is a good time to switch cameras. Oh, by the way, the brown that I bought for the other one was a one that was mixed match of. I went to the local hardware store, and these, you know, they every now and then they have, I guess they call them, where they mix their own paint. Sometimes the paint's not mixed correctly, so that's why I use as a brown as a base for that. That's why I couldn't. That's why I couldn't. That's why I couldn't find the brown paint, because it was not in one of these. Let's cameras. Sorry for the jiggleness, because that camera is a little on the. It's literally hanging off of a quarter 20 rod with zip ties. So let's go over here. I thought I had gotten rid of all the flies, but apparently I did not. It kept on showing up. Well, it got its 15 minutes of fame. So, all right. Well, I guess it's time to. All right. See you later, Lynn. I guess it's time to take off for the day and watch what Anthony Dodge is plotting. And so, for everyone who was here and on the chat and on the rewatch, I guess is called. Thank you for all coming. I guess do a like, subscribe, and all that fun stuff. And also, I think the world needs a little bit more love. So find your passion, add some silliness to it, spread it throughout the world. And